Welcome to Jump Shots from the Goal Line. I am Jonathan Dugan, your host. I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Mr. John Henningsen. Henny, how's it going, man? How was your weekend? What's going on this week for you, man?
It was good. I'm muting myself on a podcast, which is definitely not the move. In case you guys are wondering, any of you rookies out there listening, dude, it was good. It was a nice weekend. Got some golf in. Had an extra day, so took advantage of it. It's the time of year where definitely courses are prime in Arizona, and you got to be able to take advantage of the fact that we don't really have a true winter. Although, I was playing out there on Monday, and there was a little bit of snow as I
Yep.
first time I've ever parred a hole in the snow. So I got that kind of off my bucket list of things that I didn't know I wanted to do.
Okay.
Um, and then we had some football, man, which honestly, like the reason I led with the golf is kind of me and you have been talking about it. Like, sadly, the football weekend probably wasn't the most thrilling weekend of all time. Probably wasn't the most like the weekend I'll really remember. So I'll probably remember the par in the snow more than I'll remember the football, unfortunately. But we still will talk about it. Obviously, we'll cover it because it's still worth covering. It's still of interest. Just no all-time games.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, as a desert rat, like anytime you can golf in the snow at all is pretty dope. For those not based in Tucson, dude, like Arizona's been cold as hell this entire week.
It's freezing out there.
In the mornings, like, and people are going to laugh at us that are in cold weather situations, but dude, it's like 27 degrees. It's like, where am I living all of a sudden? And then like Tucson's getting snow. The mountains are still snow capped, and it's wild, man. But you know, it's a nice change of pace. It's pretty dope that you got to go hit some golf balls in it. I'm sure that, like you said, it was an experience, something you'll never forget. Unlike this weekend of football, you and I both were kind of game planning for the episode, and man, what a forgettable weekend of football, right? Just a lot of blowouts, a lot of, I knew that was kind of going to happen except for one game. The Cowboys did have one of the worst play calls of all time, which we'll jump into. But overall, the week before was much better than this week in terms of football, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like just like quality of games, the drama, anything tied to it. We did get snow in Buffalo, so at least there was, so at least it was as cold as it is in Tucson. At least it appeared that way. Yeah, man, it was just like the drama was just low and like the excitement was low and these games just like really didn't deliver. I hope it's all build up for this next weekend because we've got, two good ones hopefully coming. But yeah, man, it just wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't like gripping me. I watched. I still was there. I sat through all of it. But yeah, I don't know if your feelings were any different, but I just wasn't moved by football this time. And when I thought we got over it, right? We talked about the therapy we needed with the Ravens and Chargers, and I got myself emotionally like available for football again. And
Yeah.
it was just like okay. It was like yeah, this is a date, but it's not a good one.
Yeah. In terms of therapy, I'm definitely much better than where I was at a week ago. It was funny enough that, I called Greg Roman a fat fuck and he was terrible. And literally the day that we released that episode, he got, they said mutual parting ways, but that's just coach speak for, hey, we fired him. So that was cool, dude. I woke up and I saw that news and I felt a hell of a lot better. So that's always fun. And, you kind of were already going through it. They got rid of Joe Lombardi, which I know you're probably happy about, and
Right.
canned everybody on the offensive staff. Your boy is still there, though, so that's interesting. I think he probably has one more season where if you guys start slow, he's probably gone, or who knows, man. I think, with the whole Sean Payton stuff, I mean, he's demanding an incredible amount of money to coach anywhere. I don't know if that would have even really happened with just how the Chargers operate anyway. So, and then Harbaugh is still in Baltimore. He has lived on again. He is just like, I guess, the invincible man. This is like his fifth offensive coordinator he's had to can. So at the end of the day, man, we all know who's making that hire, and he lives on. So we're both kind of in the same boat, hopeful, but with the caveat that it could all burn down at any moment, right?
Yeah, and maybe I don't know. We didn't really talk, but maybe Payton just goes nowhere. Maybe he just hangs out and waits for the Chargers for one more year. Maybe that's who he's always wanted, and he's just gonna wait for us.
Tell yourself that, dude. This is just more therapy, I don't know. He's interviewed with frickin' everybody. I mean, he interviewed I think twice with Denver now, which that would be an interesting fit. Maybe he can get Russell Wilson not to be such a weirdo. Um, and then I think he's interviewed with the Colts. I know he's definitely interviewed with the Panthers. I think he even has an interview coming up with the Texans, which I just cannot see him signing up for
Yeah,
that shit show. But the
no.
man is well traveled at this point. He is interviewing everywhere. He's kind of at the point though, and I don't know if you feel this way. I'm just like, okay, dude, like I know you're a known commodity and you're very good, but like just make a freaking decision, right?
And that's what I'm saying. Maybe he's not out here to make a decision yet. Maybe he's like
Uh
in love. Dude, if you're in love, you're in love. What are you gonna do?
yeah, you're right, dude. I'm kind of
Heart
shocked at some of the
wants what the heart wants, my friend.
it's true. I'm kind of shocked at some of the other coaching candidates that are popping up all over the place. I've seen Mike Pettin, former Cleveland Brown great. I've seen just a litany of former coaches. Who's the guy? Damn it. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. I think he coached the Jags and then he went to Dallas and he was their defensive coordinator for the past couple of years. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, backwards hat guy from the Falcons, Quinn.
Bald. Yeah, Dan Quinn. And you know why I remember him is because apparently when the Arizona Wildcats had a defensive coordinator opening, there was a hot rumor that he was begging for that job, which wow, okay. If you're begging to coach the Arizona Wildcats, something's going on. But hey, it is what it is. He might be a head coach here pretty soon. There's a lot of guys out there that I'm just shocked to see that they are still head coaching candidates. But the NFL is just kind of one of those leagues where you definitely see the recycling of head coaches and just hope that it works out this time. And
Yeah,
then some of these
there's only like 50 guys that know football apparently. So
apparently,
like
yeah,
the list is because you're seeing like Pat Shermer is like making the rounds again for coordinator jobs and stuff. And
hmm
I'm like, what could we possibly need to see more of Pat Shermer's offense? But you can continue. It is, you're
yeah,
right. It's wild. Like the list is so stupid when you see the candidates. You're like, these guys are still like, all right, whatever.
yeah. And you're right, dude. Even like with coordinator jobs, it's like, dude, how is this guy getting a freaking look, right? I think even like the Ravens are interviewing the guy that filled in for the Broncos after they canned like their coaching staff. He was their offensive coordinator. And he was their run game coordinator before. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why are we interviewing somebody whose offense was probably the worst in the league for a better like part of the year? But you know what? Like, what the hell do I know? I just run a sports podcast. That's all. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But that's just kind of the NFL, right? Let's jump into the games themselves. We are calling them boring. We're calling them not exciting, but they happened. So let's start with the first one. Kansas City beat Jacksonville 27-20. This was not as close of a game as it appeared. I think, I say that, but the Chiefs were up only 20-10, leaving the third quarter. And in typical Jacksonville fashion, Jacksonville kind of turned up the heat there at the end. And only lost by 7. Trevor Lawrence had an okay game, throwing for over 200 yards and had a touchdown and a pick. Travis Etienne is looking more and more like a very, very good future option. And then Christian Kirk had a touchdown. I know a lot of people clown that signing in the offseason, but he ended up being a pretty good signing. But I think the story of this game was obviously Patty Mahomes. His ankle got just absolutely obliterated. They're calling it a high ankle sprain, and he's going to try to practice this week. Tough as nails, that guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, and close your ears if you don't like hear us talking about quarterbacks you don't like. But like, dude, Patrick Mahomes is really good, and he wins a lot of games, and he's really tough, and he showed all of those things. And that's, I think with that game, that was like probably one of the easier games we talked about, right? Like, even though like no matter what we kind of thought about Jacksonville, I kind of like said, I'm not so sure yet, and I thought they like represented themselves pretty well. But at the end of the day, like it's just Kansas City at home. Patrick Mahomes, whether it's something's actually banged up or not, he got his way back out there. Kind of fun to see Chad Henne again. Why
I did
not?
not. I did not know he was still playing, and
I had no
they threw
idea.
him.
Like, no, like, but no, but just like Chan Gailey, he just shows back up or whatever, like one of these coordinators. You're just
Yeah,
like, that guy's still around? Like, my God.
I would have
But
been less shocked if Mike Kafka would have been his backup. You know what I
there's
mean? Like,
I'm like, how is it not Tom Savage? You know, like, or like, I had no idea who I was expecting, but yeah, but that was great. He like took him on a drive immediately, and that part was really cool. But yeah, that one was, I mean, really the story is there, just whether or not you think Mahomes is healthy going forward. But like, yeah, dude, he's still good. I mean, I think what the Chiefs did that was impressive though is they did start to establish the run with Pacheco, and you
yep.
saw that even with Henne, like, dude, as long as Travis Kelsey's out there and you have no plan for that, he can still kill you. So, it was still an impressive win by the Chiefs, like all around. And I actually think that they showed some things that they can repeat, regardless of what the health of Patrick Mahomes looks like. Because I think he'll play, but we just don't know what he's going to look like.
Dude, Travis Kelsey. I know a lot of people clown other fans for saying Travis Kelsey should be in the conversation for like top tight end of all time. But holy hell, man. 14 receptions, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he was absolutely incredible all year.
Yeah.
And he is their number one receiving threat. Like, he's getting doubled. He's getting, all the same stuff that a number one wide receiver would be getting. And he has been killing it. He has to be, at this point of his career, has to be in the conversation for at least top 3 tight end of all time, right?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of think you're crazy if you're not. You know what I mean? Like, or you're just like you're playing by baseball rules where you're like, oh, I gotta let him finish his career, and you're being very traditionalist about it. But the reality is, if you're watching that guy, you're like, look, they don't make a lot of these, man. I mean, this guy is,
No.
as you mentioned, he's all over the field. If you line him up at wide receiver all game, I'm pretty sure he'd still be great. But what's really cool is you can bring him in right off that tackle. You can motion him. You can move him around. You can keep him in the middle of the field. You can scheme for him, and he kills you. He was freaking awesome. I will say what was really interesting during the game is my fiance had never heard Patrick Mahomes' voice before,
Oh,
and so that's
good.
like an alarming experience for someone that's new. So that was like fun to watch in real time. She's like, "What is going on? What is that?" And I'm like, "Well, that's his voice. That's how he always sounds." And
That's not Kermit the Frog?
yeah, like yeah, that's country Kermit. It's I don't really know. Yeah, so that was funny to me, but yeah, dude, this Kelsey's the man.
Yeah, dude. And I think one of the biggest takeaways we can have with this game, right? The Chiefs are still very good. If Mahomes is able to move around, they're gonna give the Bengals a tough shot. But the Jags, man, the Jags are gonna be a force, I think, for a number of years after this year. They're gonna get gambling Calvin Ridley back next year because they got him at the deadline, which will be a huge get if he's still as good as he was before the suspension. And Trevor Lawrence just seemingly gets better each game. Doug Peterson's got that team just really humming. They are going to be a very, very good team going forward.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, they're definitely going to be, a problem, and like they're in that division where, unless the Texans find a quarterback, the Titans still seem to be kind of middling. Like obviously they have a very good coach, but they have question marks around their quarterback position. So yeah, you could see them running through that division for a long time and just expect to see them in the playoffs. And it's just a matter of, are they healthy? And I think, as you mentioned, we talked about the Ridley trade. I remember specifically talking about it, and we love that move. Like,
Yeah.
if you're the Jags, like, right, they weren't supposed to win this year anyways. Like, all they did this year was get ahead of schedule, and they got a value piece because a guy made a mistake. And Ridley's not unhealthy. He just made a bad decision, but he'll be fine on the football field for all we know.
Made a couple bad parlays. Who amongst us hasn't? So
Yeah, dude, like, if we're going to throw stones, this isn't the place, and we're not the guys.
we're living in a glass house, buddy, for sure. But yeah, that's definitely a receiving room, dude, that like already has like Zay Jones played a lot better than people expected. I already mentioned Christian Kirk. You add Calvin Ridley to that, man. All of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence has a lot of pretty good weapons. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. But yeah, we mentioned the Chiefs. They look good. It's very dependent on Kermit's health going into next game. But if I know the Chiefs, they will spray some kind of magic freaking like something on his ankle, and he will be perfectly fine slinging bombs to Kelsey next week. So,
Yeah, shoot him up. He'll be fine.
yeah, shoot him up, give him some morphine, he'll be fine.
It's not my body.
Yeah, not my body, not my choice. That's right, pal.
Yeah.
That's how we roll on this podcast. Anyway, we had the Philly and Giants game. Giants looked really good the week before. They gave it, right to the freaking Vikings. This week they looked a lot more like the Giants that we kind of expected to see all year. Daniel Jones was pretty bad, 15 and 27, 135 yards and an interception. Saquon Barkley only got 9 carries, which is just wild as hell. Like, that should be your bell cow, right? But the Eagles, dude, like, this is the team that we saw all year until Jalen Hurts got hurt. No pun intended. He didn't even have to do a whole lot. I mean, he had 154 yards and a couple touchdowns. And then that run game there in Philly is incredible. Kenneth Gainwell, 112 yards and a touchdown. Miles Sanders, who was great all year, had 90 yards. And then Jalen Hurts did Jalen Hurts things with 34 yards and a touchdown himself. And then Boston Scott, 32 yards and a touchdown. Dude, they had 268 rushing yards on a very good defense. Like, the Giants defense was not a joke all year, right? Like, we've talked very highly of Wink Martindale. Like, they had a very, very good defense all year. The Eagles look legit, man. I know it's dumb because they went freaking 14-3, but it's not hyperbole. They could be the best team in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and it's weird. We do this all the time, and like I try to guard myself against it, but it's so easy to you watch those games in I guess it's the super wild card weekend, and you kind of forget about that team that's on a bye. You know what I mean? You haven't watched them, and you're just like, hey man, Giants look good, and you get excited about that part of it. And then, yeah, I mean, that was absolutely just a show by the Eagles. That game was over by, it felt like, what, mid-second quarter?
Yeah.
That one felt over
not even
early.
not even that, dude. It was 14-0 after the first, and then the Eagles just scored another 14 points in the second. So, I mean, that game was written in the stars just to be a blowout, apparently.
Yeah, and I guess like the only thing that's interesting, I mean, like at least from the Giants' perspective, for me, like I mean, obviously it's nice that Saquon can join J.K. in the no carries club, but and I don't know if he had like the same kind of mouthpiece. I didn't see him like commenting, but he could have and should have probably. But the interesting thing about that is like now that's such like a bad taste in your mouth for Daniel Jones. That's like all that like good momentum that he brought up. Like, isn't this still kind of what you think about? And I guess we'll probably talk about this will probably be a theme for some of the other quarterbacks that were eliminated. But this kind of feels like the limitations of Daniel Jones also. And I know like this is just one game plan and maybe they can get more weapons around him. And yes, this could change, but also this feels a lot like his ceiling in a lot of ways too. So I'm kind of curious just like what your thoughts are. And then I'm ultimately curious what the Giants are going to do in that approach. We've talked about them like maybe they can get him for a few bucks less and maybe that can make it work. And maybe it does because maybe they can put enough around him, but it seemed limiting.
Yeah, and in all fairness, he did play a team for the third time, right? Because they are a divisional opponent. If there's going to be any team in the playoffs that knows how to stop Daniel Jones, it's going to be a team that won a shit ton of games like the Eagles did. And they had a great divisional record. But man, you're completely right, dude. Like, what a come back down to earth moment for Daniel Jones going into a contract off season. Not a great look, but at least he does have the season that he can kind of write about. And, he had a great turnaround. It sounds like the Giants do want to bring him back, which, I mean, if you bring him back maybe on like a 2-year deal, a prove it deal, maybe 15 to 20 million a year, there's worse quarterbacks that you can sign, right? So not terrible, but Saquon is also a free agent. And believe it or not, the team favorited by Vegas to sign Saquon this offseason is the Baltimore Ravens, which I would vomit. Please no, we have running backs. God, please don't make that happen. I love Saquon, but we do not need a running back. But the Giants do have a lot of decisions to make. They have a lot of high-profile free agents. They did come into the season kind of in cap hell. You and I talked a lot about that in our season preview. But Brian Dable made it work, right? Like, Giants probably had one of the worst rosters in the playoffs, and they won a freaking playoff game. So Shout out to him. He would have my vote for coach of the year if I had a vote, if I was an actual person. But I'm not, just a computer generated voice. So, but incredible season by the Giants and Brian Dable. They just ran into a much better team.
Yeah, man, and I think, I mean, just long story short, at least from my perspective, it's just, I'm with you. I think Dable's a good coach. They found that. They could probably go the Daniel Jones route, resign it, but again, we, maybe discuss some of the limitations there. But I think the Giants are still in a good place, and all in all, it was a good season. The Eagles are just ready to roll, man, and so I guess we'll talk about that in a minute in terms of like maybe who we think we're going to see, but no doubt the Eagles were super impressive there.
Yeah, dude, they're just kind of a wagon for sure. They have a lot of weapons. They have a good run game. Uh, Jalen Hurts is an incredible quarterback, and that defense is rock solid as well. So, no hyperbole here, man. I think they may be the best team in the playoffs. Looking at the other game that happened, this was probably the most surprising to me, not necessarily because of who won, but just the result. Bengals, taking it to the Bills, winning 27-10. I just expected more of a game out of the Bills, right? Like Bengals, we've talked about them, dude. They haven't lost a game in 2 months. They're a very, very good team. Did not expect them to win by 17 points though. Josh Allen, I think the narrative needs to start being said. Like he's had a tough go in the playoffs. Every playoff game he's had, dude. Like he has not set the world on fire in the playoffs, and this is just another year that. Sure, it was pretty emotionally charged with the DeMar Hamlin stuff, but the Bills didn't show up, dude, and largely it was because of Josh Allen.
Well, the blame has to go somewhere, right? I mean, you're right. It's been like a weird one, and there's certainly kind of been. I don't even want to say they're giving a pass, but there's just been other stories to focus on. So I don't
Right.
think we've really chipped away or picked away at like what this is. But the blame has to go somewhere, right? And if I'm breaking it up, like either at some point you got to start looking at the head coach or kind of what they've done to because like to me that's I think the situation is kind of twofold. Like I do think there is some limitations to what Josh Allen can ultimately do or be, but I don't think those limitations are something that I wouldn't want to take on. But what they haven't done, and I think we've kind of alluded to this in some of our other conversations around the Bills, is they haven't built a run game around him. Yes,
No.
they do have a weapon in terms of like a number one wide receiver, but I mean, I'm not looking at Knox or some of these other guys and
Gabe
saying like,
Davis.
wow, yeah, like these guys are loaded. Like, stick Gabe Davis in another system, and I don't know if we're even talking about him or not, frankly. So, but I think you're right. I mean, the discussion is going to shift, and someone's going to start taking the blame here. I'm guessing it's probably not going to go from at least the Buffalo standpoint onto Josh Allen. So to me, it's really just about like how long is Alicia McDermott, or what are they going to do around Josh Allen to get this right? Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, once again, dude, just kind of stalling out. Like they came to they're there. They make it, obviously like the game with Mahomes last year was wild and it was like the most fun game, but at the end of the day, like even the Chiefs weren't the Super Bowl champions, right? So, yeah, I don't know. There's definitely going to be a story there. The chatter's going to start, and I think that clock is ticking on someone now because now they've had a couple losses in the playoffs.
Yeah, dude, and I think we already mentioned him, right? Brian Dable, like that proved to be a really big loss for them. I think his chops as an offensive-minded guy were proven with a pretty bad Giants team, and he turned that thing around. And I think it showed this year in the playoffs that they miss him quite a bit. I think a huge storyline going into the offseason is Stephon Diggs. Last year he stood on the field in Kansas City and stared it down and was obviously very disappointed. And then this year, I don't know if you saw the stories, but apparently he left the field before everybody else, went to his locker room. He was pissed. A couple guys on the team had to calm him down, and he went into the press conference talking about how pissed off he is just about losing. And that's a guy who, you said it yourself, man. Like that's their one and true weapon. If he's not happy, there's tons of teams in the NFL that would take, Stephon Diggs on their team. I can think of one in Baltimore that needs a true number one. But you got to really, really, if you're the Bills, treat that situation seriously, because if he is really unhappy and he ends up, forcing a trade or what have you, like you're already very thin on weapons, like you said. I agree with you, man. I think Dawson Knox is a good tight end. He's not even top 5, top 10. He might be top 10, but he's nothing to really write home about. And dude, you and I highlighted it before even the season. Their run game was suspect. Devin Singletary's kind of a scat back. He's never going to get you the tough yards you need in crucial situations. James Cook was a rookie that was good in spots, but I think he has his limitations. And you look at the rest of. Go ahead.
I would say, were you shocked by how little Josh Allen ran and like how much his running didn't impact that? Like I kept watching that game, I just kept thinking like, all right, like soon he's going to take off because they have like no running game, and it seems like they're sitting in like these softer coverages to prevent anything down the field, and like they never even got the run game going for him. And I don't know if that was like by design or if he. I was honestly wondering if he's kind of shook by the whole thing and he doesn't want to run, and maybe he's thinking about his longevity, his life, and being like, hey, maybe I don't want to take as many hits as I have been taking. Like, I don't know. I thought it was a really weird game from him, to be honest. And I didn't want to, sorry to interject, but I just thought it was you're talking about the run game. So I don't know if you noticed that too or thought about that at all, but.
I think it came down to more like clock management. You know what I mean? Like they went down 14-0 very quickly out of the first quarter. And, coming out of it, like I just don't think that could have been a huge part of the game plan after that. You kind of have to keep up with a hot offense in Cincinnati. And I think they just had to come out slinging the ball. And I think it just came down to the Bengals had much better weapons than they did. I mean, the Bengals have, dude, if we're going to keep it, completely real, the Bengals have one of the best offenses in the league, bar none, right? And the weapons that they have are insane. So I think the Bills just saw the writing on the wall, like, hey, we have to sling it around to keep up.
Yeah, I can't argue with you there. Debatably two number one receivers. Like there's no debate about Jamar Chase, and basically it's is T. Higgins the number one? I don't know. I think I'd take him. I think he's probably number one on a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And then the next conversation then too, I think, and obviously Mixon's very good, but I think the next conversation is just like, how freaking good is Joe Burrow? And like, he is definitely putting himself like in a conversation that very few quarterbacks are in. He's officially like, if he wasn't in the club after last year, like he is in that club now. He's like no doubt a top 5 guy to me.
Yeah.
And he's just chilling, man. He just doesn't seem to make mistakes. He just, I don't know. He doesn't get enough credit for like being a passer of the ball. Like I don't know what we really give him credit for. I think I have a hard time like describing him other than he's just obviously very good.
Yes. Very, very cool under pressure. They call him Joe Cool for a reason. Extremely dangerous. Obviously, he's helped out a lot with that incredible receiving core. You already mentioned a couple guys, but Tyler Boyd too, man. Tyler Boyd's good.
Yeah, that guy doesn't suck.
Hayden Hurst has been really good for them this year. And then that run game, with Joe Mixon, like if you're able to sling it around like that and then just, out of nowhere, bring a guy like Joe Mixon who has 20 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown, like, dude, you're pretty much unstoppable on offense at that point. It's going to be very, very, very interesting this weekend's game against the Chiefs, because those are just two quarterbacks that are very, very special. But dude, I think everybody kind of wrote in Bills versus Chiefs for the AFC, and the Bengals won the damn thing last year, and they are looking really, really strong this year again. Like I said earlier, man, they have not lost a game in 2 months. Kansas City better buckle up, dude, because they're coming out swinging.
And the Bengals are favored on the road, right? So we're going into Kansas City, and Las Vegas has looked Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes dead in the eye, and they said, we like the Bengals in this game. So I think that tells you a lot. And I think they're the Super Bowl favorite now. So that weekend flipped a lot of people's brains, I think. And I get it, because the Bengals looked like a complete football team. I thought the Chiefs showed that like in a lot of ways, but I don't think the high end of their defense feels like at least what the potential of the Bengals can do. And their run game seems a little bit more, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. Like they lost all these linemen, and like that's what was so shocking, is that they just came out and they ran the damn thing. Like, and
dude, they dominated at the line.
Yeah, the hard like when like the hardest thing to do is like really like run when everybody knows you're going to and close out that game. And Joe Mixon and the gang had no problem doing that, and they looked like
None.
they are enjoying every bit of it.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, man, the Bengals are not a problem I thought I was going to be dealing with for a long time here. We kind of already talked about the Jags and how they'll probably be around. The Bengals definitely are going to be around, and I think Mike Brown's onto something here.
Yeah, and that's so painful for me to admit. But Zach Taylor, man, hey, hell of a coach coming from that Sean McVay coaching tree that everybody just loves. He's been definitely
Oh,
the most successful of that coaching tree so far. And they have a good defense too, man. Sam Hubbard's really, really good. Trey Hendrickson's really, really good. That defensive line's awesome with Reader down there as well. And then they have some pretty good linebackers with Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. So dude, I would not be shocked if the Bengals go into Kansas City and kick ass. I would not be shocked at all, especially with Patrick Mahomes having a bum ankle. I think that's probably why Vegas flips it a little bit with the uncertainty there.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think that plays a massive part of it. And if we're going to keep it completely honest, right? Like, what is Patrick Mahomes great at, and what makes him different than most quarterbacks is his escapability and his mobility in the pocket. If he's got a high ankle sprain, dude, and he's sitting back there, Orlando Brown hasn't looked good at left tackle. The rest of that offensive line should be better than what it is. And the Bengals defense is really, really good right now. So I think Vegas might be right, dude. I think we're going to see a Bengals in the Super Bowl type of thing. And for my money, I think it's probably going to be against the Eagles, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll talk about. Did we cover the other NFC game yet? Like, am I
Not yet,
blanking out
and
again? Okay,
there's not
but
a lot to cover.
yeah, I was like, I know I'm like remembering what it is, but I am excited to talk about the Cowboys falling short a little bit. So, but it is, yeah, I'm with you. I think I don't know. You could honestly talk me into the Chiefs side or the Bengals side of this. And the only bummer is, if Patrick really can't move, and not that we even need him to move a ton, but I just hoping he's like mobile enough so where we get a competitive game. But I think
Yeah.
if you're either one of those teams, you do not want to fall behind because, like I said, Kansas City, I think maybe not as in a dominant fashion as the Bengals, but they also showed a propensity and ability to close out that game running the ball. So I think if you're either one of these teams, as much as I believe in Burrow or Mahomes' ability, if healthy, to bring them back into a game, I don't think you want to fall behind either of these teams because both of these quarterbacks know how to win games.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the other NFC game, right? Like the Cowboys losing to the Niners 12-19. What a stinker of a game, dude. Like just overall, Dak Prescott looked exactly what people clown him for. It did not look good at all. 23 of 37, 206 yards, a touchdown and two picks. Ezekiel Elliott looks fat. He doesn't look explosive at all. He's on that bloated contract. Again, no pun intended. And really their only threat is CD Lamb, who, by the way, is incredible. He's awesome,
Yeah, he looked really good. Yeah.
but he's their whole offense, right? Like he's their whole offense, that and their tight end. The Niners really had no business winning this game if they play any other NFC team in the playoffs. Like they probably lose. Brock Purdy looked like an undrafted free agent, didn't look terrific. They didn't run the ball especially well, but it's kind of what we're going back to with a lot of these games, right? Impact tight ends. Like Kittle looked great, right? Like Kittle was their whole offense for the Niners, and they just have a very, very, very good defense. Like D'Amico Ryan should get every team that needs a head coach should get all the interviews, and whoever hires him is going to be a very smart football team because he is a hell of a defensive coordinator.
Okay, we'll just keep that energy though if the Texans hire him because you're going to have to
Oh,
admit that the
he ha-
Texans are a very smart football team according
he
to your
has an
words. So
interview and he did play there, so
yeah, I know. I think that's like the fit. Like, and I just feel like Houston is like dude. I don't know. I hope he does. I hope he gets a better job than that. I'm tired of
yeah,
watching like people fall on the sword there. But if he's going to get an opportunity for a head coaching job, that's obviously special. There's only 32 of them and all of that story. But to your point about the game, yeah, it was just a bad game. Like it just,
so
I felt
bad.
the Niners just, I kind of got the feeling that the Niners were like they were just extra conservative. Like this team across from us is not a threat. We can just kind of hang out here. Like the defense can win this game. We don't have to take a lot of chances. We can just like take some air out of the ball. Like we don't even have to really score points, and we're gonna win. And
Yes.
that proved to be very true, like right up until the last moments, right? Because as much as that tight end was very much a factor, like he makes it like that was a terrible, like to not get his second foot down on that reception uh, was unbelievable, right? Like, I mean, that was really the first big mistake and what really put them in a bad position for that weird play call. And then the weird play call, which might have been it might have been great. I don't know, but
No, no.
but probably not. But I understand they're in a tough situation. But watching Zeke get bulldozed by a D
God.
tackle was like so freaking hilarious. And then of course the receiver gets blasted. I mean, like just everybody on the field it looked like all the Cowboys got murdered on the field, essentially. And I was like, well, that was fun,
John,
But
you can put
it was
lipstick on a
rough, dude.
pig. You can put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig.
Is
You
that
know what
another
I'm
Zeke
saying?
fat joke, dude? Let it go, man. Like it's not like we've talked about it. We're not that lean right now. We can't
Well,
be throwing
here's one more. I know Zeke's
back in the
fat now.
glass house.
I know Zeke's fat now. He ain't a sinner. All right. Like that was the weirdest play call ever. Like, and I get you want to have as many weapons out there as possible, but bro, holy hell, what a play call. Like Mike McCarthy, you're already like kind of on the hot seat because your boss is Jerry Jones. That's what you pull out when you I it was one of the worst play calls. It was probably the worst play call I've seen since the Colts pulled off that really weird ass, kind of similar play call where they lined up two guys on the offensive line and snapped the ball and were like, "Hey, this is gonna work." It was that, it was bad. It was very bad, and I felt terrible for the guy that caught it because he got absolutely rocked as soon as he caught the ball too. So
I'm guessing no one in practice ever hit Zeke like that. What do you think?
Man, I don't know. Zeke probably pisses off a lot of people. Maybe he's been pushed a few times like that, but I don't know, man.
I don't think from that center position he's seen a push quite like that from someone lined up in a zero technique right over his nose like that. So
It was immediate, dude. Like,
yeah, that was I couldn't believe it. I mean, because that my eyes were just fully locked in on Zeke. I'm like, all right, I want to see what this action is, and I'm like, buried. All right. I mean, that was like incredible and like
like
so
six
funny to
feet
watch.
back.
Like
Oh,
it
so
was
bad.
it was such an icing on the cake for like we already knew where that game was going. Like that game too, like felt like I mean the Cowboys never felt threatening, and I'm
It was
sure
a
Shanahan and
snooze
the '90s
fest.
felt the same way. And that's another. I mean, I would say like if you like we we're just talking about the Giants. Giants at least have to be excited about their coach, and then maybe you have more hope for Daniel Jones than when you started the season. I think if you're a Cowboys fan,
Yeah.
you hate your coach and you probably hate your quarterback now, and they're probably getting like and that ice gets thinner and thinner year after year as he continues to kind of like this is really what he delivers in the games that matter.
Do you
Like
see too, by the way, that Dak Prescott's girlfriend broke up with him 2 days
I
after the
did. I was
game?
gonna try not to bring it up, but I did see that. Yeah, like she, like,
Oh man.
yeah, man. Of course, yeah. I'm like this. Yeah,
All
it just gets
time
funnier.
worst few days, bro. Like just tough.
It's
Oh
not good for
man.
Dak right now. It's not good for Dak right now.
You
And I
gotta
don't think it's good
wonder.
for the Cowboys, man. It's not good for they got to look in the mirror again, and Jerry Jones is only going to see himself. So
You
whatever.
gotta wonder that play call. Do you think they practiced that at any point during the season? I doubt it. There's no way, dude. There would have been a
Well,
mutiny.
that's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you for sure they didn't do that live because Zeke was not ready to get put on his, like to be buried into the turf. But I'm sure they run it. I mean, I don't. Here's the thing. I honestly do not have any criticism for this call per se. I just thought it was hilarious. But I mean, like all the time, you're hearing people like clamor for like if you're gonna do this like pitch and whatever play, like get more athletes out there. So it made sense to me,
Yeah.
like to a point. Obviously, like the execution or whatever happened, it was not good. I don't understand the idea of like throwing it downfield if you're just going to start laterally it everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
just get the ball out of Dak's hands and start the laterally process. So probably one is to go back in the think tank, but I'm sure they practice it once or twice.
I'm glad you believe it. I don't, dude. There's no way.
I mean, I say that and then like immediately like just picture Mike McCarthy in a Tommy Bahama shirt, and I'm like, no way, that piece of shit. Yeah, like I'm like the
uh,
guy, like the
and
guy's probably drinking a 68-ounce margarita right now, but sure, yeah.
dude, and just like that, Kellen Moore's hope to be a head coach goes up in freaking flames once again, dude. Oh my God. Like, so bad. And it was the most like street football thing I've ever seen. Like, who amongst us has not pulled off that play Like when you're just playing in a turkey bowl or something, you're like, hey, guy that's built like a running back, snap me the ball, and everybody else just go long. Like that's definitely happened, and that's exactly where Mike McCarthy picked that out of.
Well, I know Mike McCarthy likes a turkey. That much I can say. Beyond that, I don't, no promises, but I bet you that
Uh,
guy likes a turkey.
yeah. Well, we already talked about the AFC Championship game quite a bit, but like the NFC Championship game, Niners are going to go into Philly. I just don't see a way. I mean, the Niners have a very good defense. I already said that, right? But the Eagles we mentioned before are just so loaded, and it's such a good offense that I cannot pull like a 49ers win out of my hat. Like I'll be shocked if they win. Are you in the same boat?
I don't think shocked is the word, but I think that they're hyper dependent on like game script, right? Like if they don't get a lead, I think it's much different for them.
Yeah.
Just because of like, again, they're on the road, and my only like the only thing I have concerns about the Niners has been the same thing that I've had concerns about the Niners for like 3 4 years. It's just quarterback play, like. And in this case, it's not because he hasn't played well. It's just because he's young and he hasn't seen it, and we haven't seen it. So it's hard to picture it, right? If they're down
Right.
14, am I picturing Brock Purdy bringing them back? Like, no, that's the part I really can't picture. Now, if they go
Yeah.
up 14-0 because they get a big turnover, Debo makes a ridiculous play, scores. They find Kittle over the middle, he scores, and now they're in control of the game.
Yeah.
Well, then I can see the Niners winning. So I just think it's like a lot more script determinant, I guess, or
Hmm.
game flow. But I mean, I could see the Niners hanging around, dude. I mean, I'm gonna try not to be as, like we didn't see the Eagles, and so we didn't know what they were gonna look like. Now we've only seen them one time. It was against one team that they're familiar with. Like maybe they don't look the
Hmm.
same against the Niners. A lot of teams
Yeah.
haven't looked the same offensively against the Niners that they have other weeks. So I don't know. I still think that one's a game, but I would lean Eagles. They are at home, and a quarterback I have a little more faith in.
Yeah, dude. I think it just depends too, right? Like, I can already tell you what the 49ers game plan is going to be. It's going to just run the hell out of the ball with McCaffrey and the rest of their running back core because you want to try to keep the Eagles off the field, right? I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. And they do have one of the best run offenses in the league. But they're going to be playing a very, very stout D line. So it's going to be very apparent early, I think, by determinant of how well are the 49ers running on this team. If they are able to pull off some good drives where they're just moving the ball along, moving the chains, and then doing some play action, like you said, to Debo or to Kittle, yeah, it's going to be a fun game. But if they're not able to move the ball with the run game, it's going to be a long day.
Agree. Yeah, that's when because that Eagles defense, like we don't talk about them, but I mean that's a really good pass rushing defense. So if they get ahead on you, that's going to be a nightmare for a rookie quarterback. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's. I think that they're both going to be good. I mean, I hope this weekend delivers for what the last weekend did not. I'm
Yeah.
expecting two tension building games. If not, I don't know if we're going to see like the sparks that we saw of like a Kansas City Bills game. We're going to have a 35-35 type shootout. But as long as we have two competitive games, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, that's all I want too, right? As two people that their teams are not in the playoffs anymore, I just want to watch good football because it's coming down to the wire where we're not going to have it after a couple weeks, and I just want some good stuff to reminisce on. So I agree with you, buddy. Moving on from football, and we're not going to pander on this too much because there's not a lot to even pander on, but the NBA world. After the Super Bowl, it's kind of the NBA show because that's right when the trade deadline will be heating up. You're already starting to see some sparks with the trade deadline. Rui Hachimura got traded from the Wizards to the Lakers for Kendrick Nunn, and I think like a second round pick or something like that. The guy's averaging 12 points a game. He's having a pretty good little year. Should be a good piece for the Lakers, who are starting to kind of pick up steam. LeBron is doing LeBron things. AD, if he can stay healthy, is good. And now you're adding a guy that, if he does go down, can give you a little bit of juice from that 4 or 5 spot. So what were your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I don't know if that like dramatically swings the Lakers in any one direction, but I'll just say that I'm impressed that they were able to make a move of any kind.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty much, like I mean, that just kind of, I think, like, you know, if you're a fan of a team who's been kind of sitting in a stalemate, like, I don't know, I can't think of an example off the top of my head. Let's say the Phoenix Suns, and like you haven't been able to make a move because you feel gridlocked. Like you're looking at the Lakers and you're like, God, they're like in cap hell. They have like no assets, and they were still able to make a move and pick up a player. So from that sense, like you're just going like, all right, like so where are the rest of the dominoes going to fall, and one of these other teams going to get involved and start making moves. But it's a nice move for him. I don't think it like changes the landscape of anything.
Hmm.
I think they're totally dependent on AD's health. So
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
all that matters still. Like, yes, this does give them a better piece, and what LeBron's doing is incredible, and all of those things. And I definitely think the Lakers are definitely better than the team we were kind of laughing at the beginning of the season. And I don't think you probably want to see them if they can sneak into the playoffs here, but
Yeah.
just because of the LeBron factor, I think. But ultimately, yeah, it's a nice move. It's good that Rui will get some shine, but it also might expose him, as we saw with some Lakers players in the past as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I'll have my eyes on it, but I'm not really swung one way or the other at this just yet.
I can tell you this much. There are going to be a lot of Lakers jerseys sold strictly because that man's on the team. The Lakers are already a very popular team in, Asia and specifically Japan. And now they have one of the most popular players in the Japanese world on the Lakers. So who knows? Maybe the Lakers did that all for pure revenue standpoint because they are about to sell a lot of jerseys.
Yeah, I like Rui. I just like. I mean, anybody who comes from the Wizards, though, it just feels suspect, and I don't get to watch them ever. So I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know how he's really developed. So I just have a hard time like really speaking to him.
Yeah, I mean he's good down low, and that's something that they've needed. So should be a decent piece. And like you said, they didn't, they couldn't really give up a lot because they're in cap hell. And getting rid of Kendrick Nunn, who's been a zero for you anyway, and a second round pick that you probably wouldn't use to begin with, like, hey, good trade.
Yep.
Other
Yep.
than that, I know I did see on the Twitter sphere, Jay Crowder is for sure getting traded, which we all knew that anyway. The guy's literally working out in a hotel gym in Atlanta. But the big news out of Phoenix is Matt Ishbia, the new owner, should be sworn in before the trade deadline, which is massive news for the team because apparently, even though
Do they get
he's
sworn in, by the way? Like, I love that you said it
yeah,
that way. I like
they
that you kind of
do.
just found those words. They swear them in. Is that what happens?
Yeah, that's exactly, dude. That's the verbiage used. That is the vernacular, friend.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I know. But apparently, even though he's been exiled from the NBA for a year now, Bob Sarver, I guess, is still calling shots until he's not. And I was reading today that any move that isn't for above the vet minimum, he still has to sign off on, that makes a lot of sense why we haven't done a single trade yet.
Correct. Yeah.
But yeah, leave it to Sarver to not want to pinch a
Yeah.
single penny,
Yeah.
even on
Of
his way
course.
out.
Yes.
Way to keep up your legacy, pal. But Ishbia should be sworn in. Yes, sworn in, just like the president,
It's
before the trade
incredible.
deadline. So that is good news on the Phoenix Suns front and for the Jay Crowder front. There are whispers of a potential 3-team deal with Milwaukee and another team involved where Jay Crowder will be going to Milwaukee. I think if you're the Suns, right, you're on a 4-game win streak. You're getting a little bit healthier. Cam Johnson's back. He's looked phenomenal. Chris Paul is back. He's looking much better than he did in the beginning of the year, which isn't hard.
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton is terrible. Don't get me started on him. And then Devin Booker, they'll have an update for him in about a week, they said. So if you can get even just a good bench piece, and when I say good, it's probably going to be on the same level as Crowder, if not maybe a little bit worse. That's a good trade. You're not going in there trying to get draft capital for Jay Crowder. You're not trying to get a bunch of guys that are just filling your roster. You already have a bunch of those guys. They probably, now that Cam Johnson is back, they probably need like another point guard because Cam Payne is always hurt and he's just not that great. Maybe a center. Or just like a scoring guard off the bench because Landry Shamet, who has been better this year, he's never going to create a lot for himself, right? He's a catch and shoot 3 kind of guy. But if they can get a true scoring guard off the bench, that's what I would look for.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think that the Suns are interesting because you could really talk me into any player positionally. That
Yeah.
would be interesting to me. So, if you told me it was a wing that could score, if you told me it was a wing that could defend, if you like you said, if you told me it was like a really reliable backup big, I'd be ecstatic. But I do think like someone who's a ball handler and someone who can play make would be ideal. But when you're talking about trading for, when you're just talking about moving Crowder, like, is that what you're going to get back? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
are you getting someone more like the Rui conversation where you're like, yeah, it's a nice piece and I can see him rolling in and maybe he like really, buys in and becomes an important piece, but like really like we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a Suns fan, at least like we are, you can be optimistic that they're getting healthy. They've kind of righted the ship. They're hanging around. And they're at least back in the playoff picture, whatever that means. And if they can get healthy and get right at the right time, that would be really nice. I'm still actually just getting, I can't get past the fact that, like, what are they swearing on? Are they swearing on a Bible? Like, do they actually, like,
Uh,
does the NBA get involved in the Bible? Like, is it just like Michael Jordan's diary? Like, is it his gambling
David
debts?
Stern's
Yeah,
biography.
like, is it like, what are they swearing? Like, that just makes me laugh so much, but God, Sarver
There's
sucks too.
they're swearing on top of the frozen envelope from the
Yeah,
Knicks draft.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can feel the cold. It's like, yeah, yeah. Can you feel that? That's Patrick Ewing. Yeah, like I just want to know if it's like all the secrets or whatever it is. But I don't know. I mean, if you're the Suns, I'm just glad there's finally going to be some movement. And dude, I feel like we've been talking about this trade deadline. By the way, Dame Lillard scored 60 points while we've been recording this. He scored 20 in a row, all of a sudden got hot and dropped 60, and the Blazers won, scoring 134 points. The NBA is still completely bonkers. So in case you like the last time we talked about the NBA, all we were saying is like all these players are absolutely going off. However, if you think about it too, we also know all these teams are basically 500 because they're all battling injuries,
Yes.
rest, whatever. So naturally, whoever's healthy is just going to go get 60 and feast on the rest of these losers. And they're not losers, but lesser players. So, dude, the NBA is just wild. It's just like it used to be Christmas. Now we're sitting here like late January, and I still have no idea what the hell any of these teams are.
Yeah.
We're completely rebounded from what we were talking about with the Suns, like we're like just burn the whole thing down, and now they're like back to where I'm like, I don't know, they actually might be the best team in the West. I couldn't tell you.
Dude, and before we get too far off what you said, right? You're speaking of lesser players. Is it a shock to you at all that the game after Patrick Beverly decides to talk shit about Damian Lillard dropped 60 points? Because it's not shocking to me.
No, and is Patrick Beverly and Eli Apple the same person? By the way, too, I meant to bring this up earlier. Like, are they the same guy? Does Eli Apple like he also has like this incredibly inflated sense of self where he's
I
like
hate him so
he
much.
has three freaking tackles, like gives up 7 catches and is like, dude, I'm the king. I'm like, okay,
Enjoy
I guess, dude.
Cancun.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, you're right. Beverly's like a what? God, I cannot wait for that guy to retire. And that is like one podcast. Like I can listen to any NBA podcast and at least give it a go. I can't do it, man. I
And it
love
sucks, dude, because
I love Roan.
I like
Yeah,
Roan from Barstool. He's
yeah.
great, but
I
man,
think he's
pairing up with
hilarious.
Beverly.
Can't do it. I can't even put it on for 1 second. Like
Me
it
neither.
makes me sick in my stomach to think about turning it on.
I feel the exact same way, dude. Like I really want to give it a shot because again, I really like Adam Roan, but like
Same.
I will not sit there and have Pat Beverly pander to me about how he's the king of defense and how everybody else sucks. Like I just won't do it, dude. Like I can't. I don't care at all about him. And the fact that he's on the Lakers and just talking shit about Dame Lillard blows my mind, you know? So, I mean, it is what it is. But, going back to your previous point, like, just where the standings are right now, it's insane. You could either win one game and be in the top four, or you could lose one game and be 10th in the West. It's insane, dude. Like, it's just a lot of strong teams. And like you said, some teams that are dealing with injuries or they're dealing with just the midseason bullshit that every team goes through where they just go through a little slump. But man, it's incredible. And you are right, dude. Like the Suns a week ago were, hey, let's blow it up for Victor. And now they're like, well, hey, we make one good trade with Ishbia, behind the reins, and we're suddenly maybe top of the West again. So it's crazy. I say top of the West, and the Nuggets have won like 27 or 30 games, so it's probably not
Yeah,
going to happen. But
it's not the top, but I mean, but I'm not like as a Suns fan, I don't think you're really even scared of the Nuggets. Like I'm not saying that we don't respect them, but you're not like if you went into the playoffs and you drew the Nuggets, I'm not saying that we're done. Like I'm like we have a chance with that team.
Suns
Like
in 4, dude.
yeah, like you kidding me? Like I mean, all those things you want to say about Aiden, like that guy delivers when he's guarding Jokic. He puts up a fight with him, and then the rest of the team scrambles. We figure it out, and yeah, and like I don't know, the league's just crazy. You just talked about it. You called that. I mean, we've won 4 games in a row. We're calling that a winning streak. It like barely even counts as that. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
4 games, but we went from like 12th to 6th. Like we were like in the lottery. And now we're, 1 or 2 more wins probably from being in the 3rd seed in the West and hosting playoff games. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
freaking
dude.
wild out there, dude.
And apparently the Suns too, just staying on the trade discussion, apparently they're willing to give up their first round pick, which if you're a team that's like trying to get rid of like a decent vet, that might not be a bad gamble because like we just talked about, they go on a little losing streak or some people get hurt like they have all year. That could be a lottery pick, and I mean, James Jones wouldn't use it anyway. So, I mean, can't hurt. I don't know, man. I just feel like though it's been very quiet on the trade front, the Nets did come out and say that they're willing to trade Seth Curry and Patty Mills. Like those are the trade rumors you're hearing. It's like not really big time guys. I mean, we're sitting here talking about Rui Hachimura being traded, and it's supposed to be a big topic. But what I will say is that the NBA trade deadline, every single year we get to that deadline and fireworks happen. And with Ishbia coming on board with the Suns, he's definitely going to want to make some noise. With them willing to trade a first round pick, with them being on a 4-game win streak, I would look to Phoenix to see that big time trade. And I would not be shocked if it included DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, so when you're talking about that, I mean, who is the piece out there that interests you? Because the biggest names that are out there, right? I think that we've even seen semi-consistently floated are all from the Raptors. Whether that's
Yeah,
Newbie, whether that's Siakam, and I think Siakam's off the table. Frankly, I think he's elevated his game.
he's so good.
I really don't see them moving him, but so I don't think you're going to see him.
VanVleet.
But Van Vliet has been out there, right? And that name has like started to bubble up a little bit more and more and more. And it makes sense because he only has 1 year left of his contract. He isn't having his best year statistically, at least from a shooting standpoint. And he's not old, but he's older than maybe some of the other guys, or at least in terms of feel.
He's got
A
some
little more
miles.
tread. Yeah, like
yeah.
it feels a little different with him. So I mean, is like I guess with like maybe Van Fleet being the guy that's the most potentially gettable. Like, does that name interest you with Ayton? Are there names out there that do? Did I miss somebody?
Uh, Van Vliet does interest me because we need an escape plan for Chris Paul, because though you want to talk about
Yeah.
miles on the freaking odometer, that dude, he's one more injury away from probably not being the same player ever.
Yeah.
And even though Van Vliet has some miles too, I feel like the Raptors beat the Warriors in the finals like 10 years ago, and it was only like 4 years ago. But even so, like that would kind of interest me, just because he is that type of guard that I think Phoenix does need. And if you can add him either as a backup to Chris Paul, I don't know if he'd want to do that, or as a second guard next to Chris Paul. God, that's a small lineup. It's at
is.
least a little eyebrow raising. I guess the only other name that's really been kind of thrown out there a lot would be like Zach LaVine, but I don't want Zach LaVine. I know you don't.
No, I don't think anybody should want Zach LaVine. I think like
Yeah.
I don't know how you can honestly, if you genuinely watch the NBA and like you're trying to assemble a team like just purely to win, how you could look at Zach LaVine. No matter what he's tried to do to make himself a winning player, all he's done is like feel like he's reshuffled the deck in terms of what the metrics look like around him. What do
Yep.
the analytics say about me? But ultimately, you watch him and you're like, dude, you're just a loser of a basketball player. Like, I don't. I mean, like,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I don't know how else to say it. Like the guy loses games. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
make winning basketball decisions like
Yeah.
repeatable over and over and over
His
again.
team hates him.
Yeah, and no one likes him. So like I mean, Andy stole a dunk contest from Aaron Gordon, which still pisses me off. So maybe it's
Yeah.
personal for me, but no, I just don't think like anybody should be really excited about Levine other than, if you're just wanting a highlight guy to go to watch to sell some tickets, like he's enjoyable in that sense. But
Yeah, and I think the only other guys that I've heard are kind of available would be like Mo Bamba, which wouldn't be like a bad pickup behind Aiton. He's having a little bit better of a year, even though Bobo has completely stole his shine. Everybody on the Hornets is available. The thing that sucks, and you and I talked about it pre-show, is like the Minnesota Timberwolves absolutely fucked the trade market. The Spurs want 2 first-round picks for Jakob Poeltl, and it's just like, what is life? I don't understand what's going on.
yeah, and I'm so glad you brought this up because I forgot how mad I am at Rudy Gobert and the Timberwolves. Like they've ruined the entire trade market for everyone, which like I'm
Yes.
hoping like thank you Lakers for making this Rui deal because it was like a sensible deal. Like you move another
Hmm.
player, you move a pick. None of these guys are big time, but like yeah, once the Timberwolves did that, it absolutely tanked the KD deal. If there ever was one to be had, I don't know, but if there ever was one to be had, that completely killed it
Tanked it,
immediately,
yeah.
and it's just ruined everything ever since. And like, of course, the Timberwolves are worse for it because who the hell would trade for Rudy Gobert and give up all of those assets? Like, it's one thing to have him, but it's another thing to give up that many assets for him. It's like literally going to be
Yeah.
one of the worst trades in NBA history, and it totally reset the market, and it's been screwing everybody. But to your point, like Jacob Poeltl, like 2 first rounders. Like, no, that makes zero sense. Like, no one has any interest in that guy. That guy also does not win games. He does not impact the bottom line in that way. And you can go on and on down the list, right? Like, Detroit's not wanting to move off of Bogdanovich, who's like an aging out 1 year deal left on it. Like what?
Yeah.
And then they're not going anywhere. Like, but they're only gonna like wait. You really have to bring a deal to us for us to even talk about Bogdanovich as if he's been like a fiber of the Pistons organization for 10 years. Like what are we talking about? Like, just move these pieces. I'm not saying teams should just give away assets, but it's gone completely.
Bonkers. Yeah.
Maybe it's
No.
wild. It's weird.
Yeah. You're weird. It's so weird, dude. The one guy I would say that I would like make a good trade for, and you're probably gonna love this. I would try to find a way to get Laurie Markkinen. He's having
Oh.
such a good year, and the Jazz are not going to do shit this year.
What's annoying about that, and you probably know this from our but like he's been the perfect 4 to 8 and 5 this entire time. Like
Yes.
he is the guy that you can play as a big, the stretch. He can still rebound, he can score, but he can really just shoot the hell out of the ball. And so you can actually stay big in the front court, but without him being a shot blocker, you don't need him to be.
Yeah.
Not that Aiton's a shot blocker, but he does really good with the verticality at minimum and it still affects shots around the rim. And yeah, it would have been just like a dream fit, and of course, it's not going to happen. And I mean, I don't know. I think I go back, like, honestly, after everything we talked about, I'm like, I just kind of want to see Mo Bamba and Aiton acting like idiots on this roster. Like, I'm like, you know what? Let's just do that. Like, as much as Fred
Yeah.
VanVleet makes the most sense because he would be an adult, he's a winning player. He actually kind of slides into Chris Paul's role almost like perfectly. You
Seamlessly.
know,
Yeah.
it's just kind of weird that you have that like redundancy while they're both here, as you mentioned. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure what
Yeah.
you do. Like, I don't know if that makes us immediately better, but it certainly can improve the franchise as a whole moving forward. So it just kind of depends on where the Suns are at. Are they trying to like swing for the fences this year and still feel like they realistically have a chance? Which I think when you have Booker in his prime, like you could kind of look at every year that way. Or do we have to make this move to make the next move? Which is ultimately what I'm maybe hoping that the Crowder deal does. Like maybe there's
Yeah.
something in the Crowder deal that I don't understand where we can get an asset that spins us into a place where we can make a bigger play. And there's a player that maybe we're just not talking about that's available out there. Maybe not Mo Bamba, maybe something a little greater.
Yeah, dude. I think with me with Markkinen, it's just PTSD from the Buffalo game so many years ago. Because like as soon as that game was over and Laurie Markkinen destroyed the world for Arizona the next season, like I always had that in me that I wanted to watch them play together. And if it could be on my favorite basketball team in the NBA, I mean, there's just more juice to that, you know?
100%. No, it just really is like a perfect fit. I mean, like
It is. It sucks,
it's,
dude.
it's either like you get the shooting of Markkinen or you actually like pair like Gordon the way they did with Jokic, where you just make him be the banger. Like there's like kind of 2 different ways you can go, and they're both Wildcats that have been available this entire time. So as someone who's already
God.
following their career, it's like tough to watch. On the plus side, if you're an NBA Wildcats fan, you might have watched TJ McConnell assist to Ben Mathurin to close out a Pacers game, and
That
that's
was
fun.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's been
that's like
great.
right. Yeah, like Ben's been great. TJ's always great. I'd also love to have TJ on this. There's a plenty of Wildcats out there that would really help this Suns organization. Just to be clear, if we just had the right people in place to see it, we could
If
have had
there's
this whole thing
one
figured out.
If there's one thing I do know, though, is that the Utah Jazz now have a dominant white player, and they will do nothing to give that player away because their fan
No.
base is loving it. So,
Absolutely
yeah,
not. You're 100% correct. Like the only way they could make that trade is if they could get 7 first-round picks and there was
and a white
7
guy.
first-round prospect white guys in the draft that nobody else
Yeah,
wanted to touch so they could draft them all. Yeah, like
yeah,
that's yeah, dating back to like Matt Harpering, like if you go back like dude, the Jazz, it's amazing. You can watch an NBA draft and like it's without fail, dude. You can just like I can mock it right now. Like I'll pick out the white guy and like I can just attach him to the Jazz and like without fail for 10 years that delivered. It's
dude.
unbelievable.
The pick they got for Rudy Gobert, who did they draft? They drafted a guy from Auburn who's a white shot blocker. Like,
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Like
oh, like
of
God,
course.
it's just so easy to write, dude. You know, like
Yeah.
it's now they have their guy and he's from Finland and they're just never going to give him up. There's just no way.
That's where analytics did kind of ruin the NBA because like there's not as many like there's still bad GMs, but there's not as many embarrassingly bad GMs anymore.
And
Like
now Danny Ainge is out there just he's going to ask for like 7 first round picks for Lauri Markkanen because he knows number 1, that's what he does, and number 2, Utah Jazz fans will absolutely slaughter him if they trade the Great White Hope.
yeah, dude, it's just I miss Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Basically,
Yeah.
like just give me those kind of squads again. Like give me who was the guy that did the triple double? Give me Ricky Davis self assisting himself a rebound for that triple double. I mean, like
Give me Portland Trailblazers Rasheed Wallace.
yeah, dude, those teams are so good. Those
The
Blazers
Jail
teams
Blazers. Yeah,
are
dude.
so
Oh my
loaded,
God.
dude. Those teams are so loaded.
But they just couldn't get out of their own way. They were
No, they
great.
couldn't. But they're like Bonzi Wells was like their 10th best player.
Dude,
And that
early
guy was
2000s basketball was like the coolest era in sports.
yeah, I only want to play video games of that. Which, by the way, GoldenEye coming to Switch is a pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't really play Switch. Like I looked at it today though, I was like, how much is a Switch? I'd love to play GoldenEye again.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, I think with that, man, we don't have a whole lot more to talk about.
I don't even know what we're talking about. So
Yeah, we're talking about Great White Hope. I think we
it's
should hang it
fun.
up.
I can tell you that much. I'm having a good time with you, but I don't know what
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. But with that said, next week we will not have an episode. I am moving into my new house. So I will be far too busy. It's going to be a dead week anyway with the bye before the Super Bowl. I'll shoot out a TikTok or 2. So please follow us on social. Follow the TikTok, follow Twitter. John, again, I must say it every week. You're killing the game out there. So, follow us on that. Facebook, Instagram, we're out there as well. So just give us a follow on social, and then please like and subscribe to our podcast if you liked us talking about the Utah Jazz having a death grip on a white player. Shoot it over to your favorite Utah Jazz fan. I'm sure they would probably love that kind of commentary. But leave us a rating, 5 stars. We'd just greatly appreciate it. And if you can leave a comment, that is also fantastic. And just shoot it out to anybody you think would love this podcast. And with that, man, hey, just enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy these playoff games. Like John said earlier, hopefully they're better than last week. And let's get ready for the last game of the year for football coming up in just a couple weeks. John, do you have any closing words for our wonderful listeners?
No, I just hope you guys enjoyed whatever we did at the last 20 minutes, because to us, that's probably the best part when we just get to talk about God knows what the direction is there. So if you like that, and hopefully you enjoyed it, hopefully that's enough to carry you through another week. Dugan, just congrats on your house, man. And
Thank you.
I'll be fired up and ready to go when we meet to talk again.
Perfect. All right, guys. Hey, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.